I have very ambitious ideas and images that I want to create, and then yesterday I had the catharsis of seeing them, like the thing that I conceptualized, that we talked about, that seemed like probably biting off more than we can chew. Yesterday I saw it and I was like, wow, here it is, 5 years of work. My name is Rosie Herrera, and I'm the artistic director of Rosie Herrera Dance Theater in Miami. We're a predominantly dance theater company that has dancers from a lot of different genres of performance, from classical singers to drag queens and b-boys, classical dancers, modern dancers, really a multidisciplinary dance company. This performance is called Surrealist El Trópico. Luke Kritzik, Clyde Scott, and myself are co-creators of the entire evening. Luke Kritzik is the lead production designer, although we always work in collaboration, and Clyde Scott is the director and designer of the projection and video art, and then I'm the choreographer. And we all collaborate and touch base about what are the concepts and what are we going to see on stage. Luke is creating the frame for what we're seeing on stage, Clyde is creating the environment oftentimes, and then I'm creating the movement that's existing on stage. We first started conceptualizing this project, I think, in 2018. We visited the space in 2019, and then COVID came. We were supposed to perform in April of 2020, so it has been a while that these ideas have been brewing. This performance is inspired first by the research that I was doing with Cuban iconography. So like, for example, I was a showgirl when I was younger, stereotypical 40-pound feather headdress and, beautiful glamorous costumes. And when I was researching Cuban showgirls, I came across a lot of famous vedettes. And so one of the works is inspired by this iconography, specifically of the Cuban showgirl and the deconstruction of what that performance is culturally. I think this work is also deeply inspired by the unique glamour of the Caribbean. All the ways that the aesthetics of a space are informed by culture and how to celebrate and make space for the beauty of that uniqueness, as well as hopefully invoke and create a space of empathy and catharsis for the audience who perhaps don't maybe see themselves in that iconography. But, the deeper you dig, hopefully, the more universal your message becomes. This work is deeply inspired by the dancers that are performing in it. They're longtime collaborators as well, and so their experiences living within this iconography is also a deep part of what influenced the work. We are completely subverting the performance space of the theater. So audiences are entering from a place they've never entered before, being in spaces they've never been in before, having more freedom to move through spaces that they've never had the freedom to move in before. So it's like laughter. I think that's why laughter is such a powerful tool, because oftentimes when people come to a performance, they're really stuck in their head. It's just nature. It's the nature and the tragedy of categorical thought. You see something on stage and you're like, what is happening? Okay, this person enters, what's their relationship, right? And so audiences are often really in their head trying to figure out what's happening on stage. And laughter has the capacity to get people out of their head and into their bodies, right? For the physical act of laughing or crying. Anything that moves you to a physical space in your body. So once you're in that physical space, there's so much more accessibility to the vulnerability of the audience, and the more vulnerable the audience, the more vulnerable the performers can be, and that's the intimacy that I crave in these sort of classical spaces, but the intimacy that we often have in the cabaret, because that's just the nature of cabaret. It's the intimacy of being close together that creates a sort of shared and mutual vulnerability. I always say it's like an emotional hurricane and you wash up on the shores of the Tropicana in Cuba, and you're living this surrealistic dream experience. Maybe that's too much to ask, but that's what I'm hoping that everybody feels. when I was a little kid, this is still in my dad's house. My dad has this like poster in our living room that's like Cuba, and it has like the map of Cuba. My father's Cuban, my mother's Puerto Rican. And in the bottom, it said Las Tres Cubanitas. And it had the Spanish, La Gitana, it had the Mulata, and then it had La Negra. And when I was a little kid, my mom is blonde with blue eyes. And I remember being like, Papi, which one am I? Am I the Mulata? Or am I the Spanish one? Who had like blonde hair. And it was the beginning of me understanding the way that race and colorism plays a role even in white presenting Latinos. And so there's two sections of this work that are deeply investigating the role of like race and the performance of race in Cuban culture. But it wasn't until I could just really be with that imagery long enough and sit in there and be in the costume and sit with it to see what it revealed to me about myself, my own attitudes, my own relationship to the iconography of my culture. And also, I'm Cuban American. I wasn't born in Cuba. And what is another layer of what that means for me? The container that holds all that research is really joyful. You know, I've been doing a lot of work in my own ancestry and decolonization and patriarchy that leads me hopefully closer to joy, and I really feel that way. I really feel like the container that holds all these questions is like a celebration of the uniqueness of all of our cultures and joy. Radical expression of joy, and like, not to get too like esoteric with it, but I will because this is how I feel, that like our joy on stage is a radical expression of liberation from all of our ancestors. And so that feels so meaningful for me to celebrate my culture and our culture on stage with this audience in this space with such a high caliber of musicians, of performance, of collaborators, and it just feels really meaningful for me. The most important thing for me is that the audience feels something, whether that's like confusion or empathy or appreciation, and most importantly, joy. I hope that the experiences, the way that we've challenged the audience to think differently about classical music and to move into the space and into a different way, hopefully that provokes a different experience of being an audience member that is more relaxed and more joyful. Like, the performance is successful is when after the bows, music starts playing, people get up and they start dancing. That to me is always the ultimate expression of integration. When what we've done, when people are picking up what we're putting down and are just like, yeah, us too, we want to dance too. So hopefully, no pressure, Cincinnati, but it would be super cool if we could dance together after the show or after the bells. So that would be, for me, a successful show.